I think it was, but it's almost like the adrenaline maybe of like seeing Metallica, but
Yeah.
also I think it's the stress of getting there, getting through traffic, and then I think afterwards it's also the crack of like so many people. It's like The Walking Dead. It's like
exactly.
a horde of zombies.
Also, I remember whenever we got down there, it was pissing then.
Oh, actually, there was the hill which is like this, and it was just like a proper mudslide. Like I think I near wiped out once or twice.
Apparently, I know people that went down there to see Foo Fighters and stuff, and apparently there's people. It was just seeing like someone to put a sheet of ice over the whole of the grass, but it's just people just woof and drinks and stuff going. You'd be gutted if you just bought a pint or you were carrying like 3 or 4 and they all just went up in the air because they're not cheap.
Oh no, and it's also even flipping the time to queue up and get a pint.
Yeah, it's just that's just the equivalent of like wah, wah, wah. That's the pinnacle of
it. Is it? I mean, that's a queer venue like up at Slane Castle, isn't it?
It's nice. I think it's a good venue.
It's like 10,000. Probably actually more than that.
I think it could be more.
I think the Odyssey was like 6,000. So
is it?
I think like the full ring and then maybe the center as well is like about 6,000. But yeah, it's probably the closest we've got over here for like a festival size venue, I would say.
I know. You know what? It's just a shame we don't have more because I think that's why Dublin gets so many bands that don't play. Well, to be fair now, Dublin's probably got a denser population, obviously. But in terms of the acts that get playing, I think they've got more of a range of venues they can play at.
Yeah, like I mean, was it Illuvite? They were in a tiny, tiny wee place. Like
you when Dickie went to see them, didn't you?
Yeah, there was like they have about 8 people for all their instruments, but there was no space for them to move on the place. As maybe twice that size for the actual like floor space. So it was a tiny wee venue. Probably I'd say like maybe size of Limelight 2.
You know what? I seen them playing Limelight 2, and I can confirm the time I seen them, I was like, that looks so claustrophobic.
Yeah, fair play to them. Like they're efficient with their space, and like they can play in quite enclosed spaces. But again, that's the thing. Like all those sort of places that are just dotted around the city for all these various sizes, and then you have like the 3 Arena, obviously, for the big shows.
The RDS and the 3 Arena. I'm trying to remember. Is it the Bond Factory was one I was at? That's a really cool venue. I like that one. Have you ever been in it?
No.
If it's the Bond Factory, is the one I'm thinking of. I'd seen it would have been Delane, Evergrey, and I can remember who the third one was.
That would have been a good gig.
That
would have been a good gig.
The sound was very good, but the sound in the place was great. But the one thing that wasn't great for it was that if you went to the back, it sort of went up tiers, like in steps.
Yes, yeah.
So if you're short arse like us, you could have just went to the back and got a good angle.
Good sort of bird's eye view at eye level.
So whereas like you go into, it's like you go into Limelight 1, and why I know like
there's just one tall guy right at the front.
It's always like Andre the Giant, just the scissors going to stand in front of you. Cheers.
I mean, I respect you're a fan of the band, but you know fine rightly what you're doing. Come on now.
It's the fact that don't go, all right, okay, there's guys who are in the same head level as me. He could probably see past me. Oh, this guy can't see completely anything. That'll do.
Aye. Slap it into him.
My bastard.
No, like I'm trying to think for venues over here, because with like the Belfast Telegraph, which I haven't actually been in, but I've heard it's a good venue.
Good.
Like you've got the Odyssey, which is probably like our big show, like year round at the very least.
Yeah.
You have like Belsonic, which is like Ormo Park.
Yep.
But it's not even. I would say it's probably equivalent to Odyssey in terms of like numbers, roughly speaking.
Yeah, and it's another one. I suppose you get some people, because obviously there's maybe just the bare minimum of seating, and I think there may be like specifically for people who are disabled and stuff. So you get some people going, I don't want to stand at a gig. So they'll probably, fair enough, if like say someone's got like issues with their legs or something, or Oh, I don't know. They're so fat they can't stand it for too long. But yeah, no. The times I've been to see Biffy Clyro.
Yep.
Was gonna see Kasabian until they cancelled 10 minutes before they were due to go on. That was good. There's no way that they couldn't have known beforehand.
See, that's the thing. Like, unless something genuinely tragic happens, like 10 minutes before, I don't see how you can, in good conscience, do that.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, the band has spontaneously combusted.
Yeah.
They will not be playing tonight. The band's Ash.
Oh.
No, apparently the story was with Kasabian that due to illness, and I'm like, illness.
See, but the thing is, like, even let's be honest, even if you're like not feeling great and you're sort of hemming and hawing, 10 minutes before a gig, if it's been led up to that point and you were like hemming and hawing, you are okay enough to like just suck it up and go through. At the very least, you say to them like, "Oh, hey, I'm not feeling great, so I apologize if my singing isn't as good," like, which is fair enough. Like, better that than not flipping playing the gig.
I took it as a case of that there was a bit of overindulgence. That's one way to put it.
Well, then, that's still no excuse.
Yeah, well,
I've known people who have come into work,
that's true. I've some bands have apparently went out in terrible states and they've put on good shows.
Yeah.
There were stories of different bands about your guy Dimebag Darrell from Pantera.
Right.
Obviously, you know the story about him.
I think I remember the story. Yeah.
About how he died.
No.
That's a long story, but no. Apparently there were stories that he could have got completely trolleyed and practically just a guitar pushed over him and just pushed it in the stage, and apparently he would have still just barely function as a human being, but somehow able to play a full set.
Weekend at Bernie's concert edition.
Yeah, someone with cables moving him.
Right.
No, but the story behind that was that he, whenever they split up, he set up a band with his brother who was also in Pantera.
Yeah.
Called Damage Plan. And I can't remember where they were playing in America. It's always America. But this guy, this complete moonbeam of a person apparently he was like obsessed with Pantera, and he was like, but he was to the level of obsessed where he was like saying things like, "Oh, they stole," like they were his favorite band, but he claimed to people that, "Oh, they stole my songs."
Right. Okay.
So alarm bells already. That is one of those mad.
Was that cognitive dissonance where it's just like, I love this band, but they've stolen from me, so that something doesn't quite connect.
But the story goes that he was like hanging around outside this gig, and security still sort of gets brought up in this, but he somehow like scaled over the fence and got into this gig, and jumped up on the stage, and I think he'd like a submachine gun. So he shot the guitarist Dimebag Darrell. I think he shot 2 security, and I think there was an audience member or something tried to jump up the stage. They got it, and then he eventually got gunned down. And I'm like, that's a waste of life for family members should have went. There's maybe something a wee bit lacking here. That the fact he's in the belief that like this band who probably never even heard of the guy, and he's got this weird attachment from reality.
Sad reality is though that can't afford treatment in a lot of cases. Like, I mean, I was in Portland, Oregon, and the amount of homeless there who it's due to mental illness, and the family genuinely can't like support them. And let's be honest, if you have a family member who is violent and aggressive, and there's nothing you can do to treat them, you do the best you can. But also, then if they decide that, because obviously in the States you could just disappear, and be like thousands of miles away by getting on a bus or something, how are you going to track them down? And it's a sad reality, like,
because you're not going to electronically, you're not going to like chip a family member like you would a cat.
No, that's it. And let's be honest, like, obviously it still happens, but Northern Ireland's a fairly small community, so you're more likely to find someone if like they, say someone throws up the head and decides, what, stuff you, I'm going to go for a walk. If you're more likely to someone will know someone,
Yeah.
or that people will get up and go and look for them and stuff. So sort of more a community aspect.
Yeah, I would say like in the grand scheme of things, if we compare the size of our towns and cities to places like, I'd say even in like in England, Scotland, and Wales, you know, in comparison, like then you quantify that against America, you'd be like, we're like a pebble in the pond.
Like realistically, Belfast is a big town.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's the best of both worlds. You've got the vibe of it being a city without all the nonsense of actually trying to drive through a city.
Yeah,
you know?
I like a one-way system like Dublin.
I avoid driving. If I ever need to go to Dublin, I'm just getting the train. Like just the thought of driving in Dublin gives me anxiety.
I was gonna say, I know, going increased heart rate and like a big vein popping in the center of your head. But you saying about mental health, I don't know. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it's just because things are more well documented in the way like their media is over there and things being reported. But it's just, I don't know. It feels like in terms of the mad stuff and like random acts of violence in America, it just screams to me like a lot of untreated mental health. You know, it's due to that, you know, because things cost that typically people going, they can't, they're like trying to justify
put off, and then
they'll be all right, and then next minute someone goes on a shooting spree. Whereas like you say over here, it's, you know, if you need it, you maybe just have to, fair enough, you might have the wait, or you could go private and go see a therapist or whatever.
Obviously the NHS has its challenges, but it's still an absolute blessing to have.
Yeah, it's free.
Like, and even the aspect of having, even if it's weeks or months down the line, knowing that there is something there down the line, for some people may actually just be enough to, you know,
to keep them going.
It's like focus. Even then, it might be a goal for people. Like, okay, I'm going to be doing X or Y.
Yep.
Maybe I can try this. Maybe I can try that. Whilst if you don't have that sort of deadline, it's just this like never-ending void in front of you. Really.
Mm-hmm. I go, can I ever like feasibly maybe get the money together to do this?
That's it.
You know, I suppose it depends. I don't know. I suppose it depends. Again, I think it's one of those human traits that people have different perspective depending on how it's impacted them in some point in life. And then if it has impacted them suddenly, then that can do a complete 180.
Oh, I was having a chat with some folks last night actually, and can't remember exactly what the detail was about, but it just sort of something didn't quite line up right with what I was sort of seeing. And it was only until today I realized the world that they see is completely different to how maybe I see it or how do other people see it. So to try to, unless one of us can see it from each other's, like, well, to see the world that they see, for lack of a better term, it's completely different language.
Yep.
There's no real frame of reference that you can bring up.
And this is why you'll never get a world that people strive for a utopia. You'll never get it, because everyone's definition of it's completely different.
Yeah. And again, if you pick one person's interpretation of it, you'd have to do some truly monstrous things to actually get everyone else in line. Well, unless you turn everybody into robots.
Yeah.
And just program them, copy paste all of that code into the human brain.
That's what that book, well, I haven't read it, but roughly I've got the gist that what's about that Brave New World. Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley.
I think I have it here somewhere. Again, it's normal case I bought the book but haven't actually picked it up.
You know what, whenever I get all this music recorded on, I'm maybe going to try and get a few books in, because I haven't read properly a book in so long. I feel like an uncultured swine.
Oh, like
it's getting the time.
It is getting the time. Like for me though, it was the biggest satisfaction. It's almost like purely justifying like hoarding sort of vibes. I was scrolling through TikTok, and don't know if you've ever seen clips for that movie called Nefarious. I don't know if I mentioned it to you before.
The name rings a bell. What's the...
Like, it's described as a Christian horror film.
Right.
And it's basically a guy interrogating someone on death row who claims to be a demon, claims to be possessed, like the devil possessing this person. And it's just the back and forth of that conversation. But it reminded me very much of one of the ones that C.S. Lewis had written, which was called the Screw Tape Letters. And it was basically from the perspective of like a senior demon writing a letter to a junior demon about how to like trick people on to like to their way of life,
Yeah.
and it's just it was satisfying. It's like, oh, that reminded me of this book. Oh, I have that book. Just being able to walk in, pick it up, and actually just start reading,
Aye.
rather than I have to wait like 2 or 3 days. The Amazon delivers it to me.
Aye. Because you've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's first world problems to complain about, but it's satisfying. Just like, oh, I'm in the mood to read this story,
And you have it.
Yeah.
Was it a good film?
I've been trying to find it, like, because it's not on any of the streaming sites. I've even tried like hoist the sails, for lack of a better term,
Aye.
and I haven't been able to find it. So I need to maybe delve a bit deeper onto the internet to find it. But
Sure. There's a film I've been trying to see for years. It's a Russian film about set during the Second World War called Come and See,
right,
and it's meant to be a very good film, but it seems to be one of those films that they say, in terms of a film that's fairly traumatizing, that isn't a horror, it's fairly memorable. So I'm guessing it's a pretty bleak Second World. I think it came out in the late 80s, but I think it's meant to be like a real bleak outlook in the Second World War.
bit like one of those ones, Midsummer and stuff like that. Except they're probably not doing it in a stylized way. It's probably
just
realistic.
Yeah,
that's probably what's so traumatizing about it.
yeah. I've always been for years wondering, because it gets a really good write up, and I'm always like, okay, so why is this film so highly regarded? I think there was my mate Jamie at a Zombified. I'm near convinced he mentioned about it and saying it's one of those gut punch films. I like those films. I know they're not for everyone, because usually you tend to find those gut punch films are the ones that end with the most like downbeat, bleak endings. But you know what? They stick with you.
Well, no, that's the thing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you need to be in the right mindset for them. It's not as if, I've had a hard day, I'll just stick this on,
No, I agree. Yeah. I know, like, if I'm
in an introspective mood, so I'll just stick this on and, allow myself to get kicked in the stomach for about 2 hours.
Like, if you're in shitty form, I think that's maybe the best time for this.
True, yeah.
I think, I don't know. Whereas if you're in tipper form going, gee, I know I'm gonna stick on Das Boot or something, or actually I'm trying to think it, or Schindler's List.
That sort of, it sounds terrible. Yeah. That's kind of the go-to depressing movie, if that makes sense.
You ever seen The Pianist?
No.
That's good as well.
Yeah.
It's Adrian Brody. But
is it First, Second World War?
Second. So it was based on a true story. It was a guy that was effectively pianist, and he effectively managed to avoid getting herded onto the trains. I think it was, if memory serves me, he was Polish,
right?
But he managed to somehow slip the net from getting put onto the train, and he got, there was people that hid, people during that time. So it was pretty much him sort of trying to keep a real low profile, so and like just effectively living
safe house to safe house,
almost. And living a period of time, for fear that at any point there's going to be like a SS search party or something just kicks in the doors. But it was a good film. I think he won an Oscar for it. But yeah, again, it was another one that's pretty bleak. Was it bleak one? Did you ever see Beasts of No Nation?
No. I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
It's on Netflix. Okay. It was actually a well-made Netflix film. No harm, Netflix. Because
they're not exactly batting 1,000.
The amount of times that like people say, "Oh, such and such got a new film," and it's a Netflix film, I'm like,
like I remember whenever it was in the cinema and I saw an advert for that one, House of Cards, and like that was their big show to like Netflix is doing doing films now, and they're like high quality and blah blah blah. Well, we all know what the crack happened with Kevin Spacey and all that, but
shame.
Yeah.
After he left the show, I was just, and it wasn't any disservice to like say, like, Robin Wright's character, like,
like they had absolutely
the good chemistry,
stellar cast and writing, and the challenge was
just he was the main.
Yeah, they wrote it to surround him.
Yeah,
and so the problem was, and once he was pulled from it, and rightly so,
felt like a House of Cards.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, like you've lost your central character. It would be like Breaking Bad without Walter White to a degree.
Yeah.
Although to an extent, you could have had Jesse Pinkman, and I mean, I think that one El Camino.
It was, you know what? It was one of those ones where I watched that because it was it was okay. It was it wasn't the well. I suppose I was like Jesse's character, so you were curious to know what happened after Breaking Bad, but it was more just a case of it just didn't have the level of attention that some of the peak Breaking Bad parts.
I think it was almost.
It was just like wrapping up an arc.
Yeah, I think it was pretty much just like
because they would have, I think, really.
Yeah, because it was the height of the tension. It's almost like the fallout of it. You know, basically letting him sort of find his happy ending.
Yeah.
Which, fair enough, you got at the last sort of episode or two of the season where he was driving off, and you could tell like, okay, this is the happy ending. But you know, given what he went through, maybe it's not as satisfying.
Yeah, because he effectively went through a load of shit.
And it's not as if he deserved it. Like it was undeserved by every stretch of the imagination, because he was probably one of the purest.
Yeah,
like, purest of heart characters in the show.
Because the amount of times, like that was it. It just it was great how it all developed, because honestly, it was just putting it across that he was just pretty much like a high school dropout, and he was just a drug dealer to get himself by. But he wasn't really, in the grand scheme of things, he wasn't really doing anyone any
he was harm. Yeah, he was just getting by. It wasn't as if he was shooting people on the street or anything like that.
And then it was just a case of it. That's how you know good writing, because with like Walter, to take him from being sympathetic because he's Dan, and then to change him from the protagonist to the antagonist, where he's like effectively, you may as well say he was the antagonist, because he's to the point that he was destroying everything around him.
And like it was such a slow,
but it was a good progression.
Yeah,
it wasn't like they didn't just ramp it up from 0 to 11. They did it gradually, and it was
only until
believable.
It was only until maybe the last season they did a flashback to him as a school teacher, and I was like, whoa, like it shows you how far he's gone the other direction. You needed almost that snapback of as a flashback to actually see, okay, he started as this very laid back, mild mannered, sort of like standard middle class America type of guy, into an absolute like sociopath, drug lord, basically.
I think it was more as well because of the fact that, well, don't know if it's one that people factor in, but obviously, at the start, whenever he was doing it, he was going out of his way to make it, to effectively have things in place that his family were provided for when he went. So he effectively was desperate. So he was acting at times almost like he had a death wish, like that.
Yes.
Tim, when he goes in the Tuco's office. And throws, I can't remember what it was down, but it
Philelimin or something like that.
The thing that like blew out the windows. And that was obviously, at that point you're like, that was probably getting a taste of living on the edge.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know whether or not it was
it's almost like was the first step, that little switch, and then eventually just sort of snowballs. But like,
and then it became survival whenever the whole thing with Gus.
Yes,
Gus was a great character.
Absolutely.
Whenever he came into, I thought it got even better.
Oh yeah, like he is an absolute champion of an actor. Like
Carlos Esposito, he's very good.
Yeah. Oh,
you know what's funny though? Have you ever seen a film called Do the Right Thing?
No.
It's a Spike Lee film. The whole thing's just set in, I think, from what I remember, it's like a borough in New York. But yeah, it's like set in like a black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's sure Spike Lee, he's a black director, you know. So, but the whole thing's set. I think it's meant to be set. Is it over 24, 48 hours? But it's meant to be like the hottest days of the year, and it's like effectively tensions rising.
Everyone's
and
grumpy and warm.
And it's like all these different characters. Like the way you could probably see it, sort of, it could be adapted into like a play. The way it sort of jumps between characters and then crossing paths.
Yeah.
But Yeah, the only people in the borough that aren't black are there's like an Italian guy that runs a pizzeria and his two sons, and the dad's he's lived there for years, but one of the sons he's friendly enough with everyone, and then everyone's a wee bit racist.
Okay.
But there's all different things. But I don't want to spoil it too much. But Carlos Esposito's in it, and the character he plays in that, when you compare him to the characters that you see him playing now, it's funny because it's like night and day. He's more of like a bit of a drip of a character. He's more more of a joke. But like you see him when he's playing serious roles, like you see him in The Boys
I was
as well.
gonna say, like, because again in The Boys he was a bit more like Gus Fring, except he was more emotive, if that makes sense. Well, he had more dialogue, I think, in The Boys.
Yeah.
But still that very suave, stoic, badass,
He just he can't be intimidated.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a great actor. There was talks that he was gonna. There's been loads of talks. There's been talks to say that he was gonna be playing like Professor X for the Xmen. He was gonna be playing Magneto. He was gonna be playing Doctor Doom. And I was like, if it was, I could have him as Professor X or Doctor Doom, no problem. But as Magneto, no, because
Magneto,
the backstory of Magneto, you need, because the whole thing with Magneto is it's obviously he's completely lost faith in humanity, and that was the whole perfect setting for him. That him and his family ended up at what was it? I think it was meant to be Auschwitz, but it was meant to be like effectively one of the death camps.
Yeah,
and that's the whole point. Whereas now, the longer they leave it, to have a character that's lived through something, at that level of atrocity,
it's a trickier.
You need it
length of time for like someone who's actually like, for lack of a better word, still living.
You need to think of something to that level of grimness that's occurred. Like if you were to, I don't know, if you were to cast an actor from over here and say Magneto came from Magneto came from Wales, you'd be like, what happened in Wales to make him,
what atrocities
happened?
you
need, and that's the only reason. Like he could, like I'm not saying he couldn't carry that, but I think you're going to need an actor that's going to reflect whatever context of whatever setting that they choose as the catalyst for it.
It's either what age they are or what age you can get them to look like.
Because
and unless you dialed it back and filmed it in the early 2000s, but that has its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think there's anything that is really equivalent or even remotely equivalent to what went on. You could, I suppose Soviet Russia and Mao China, but they're still of all the same time period.
Yeah.
So you're still bumping into the same challenges.
Because that's true. If you go through the Cold War, I know the Cold War, well, some people would go, it never ended. But like, you may as well say like whenever the Soviet Union went, so really the 80s.
Yeah.
So, but again, like you say, you need something.
There's still, even at the 80s though,
I don't think it
was never at its height. It was almost pre-Cold War that
everything was terrible.
It was like shipping people to Serbia and stuff like that.
I know like there was real dodgy things happened in China as well, but even at that with that time frame,
and it's also having
the character would still be probably in their 60s. So it's a tough one. I don't know,
and it's even as horrible as it is to say, terrible things have happened in China, but not enough people will have known about it. And you don't you can't really give a history lesson as to, whilst if you have the death camps, whether or not people have even know about it in history, there's something like in our human like psyche or whatever that you can just, okay, that's what that actually is. I think it's just because it is such a deep part of our history, like the world history.
Well, it doesn't help as well that obviously, China doesn't like things like that to
get out.
They don't want like it even to be commonplace knowledge in their own country, let alone to the West.
Yeah.
And I imagine, it's the same as North Korea. I imagine they don't want to be perceived as, they don't even want their their rulers to be deemed as like mere mortals. They want them to be,
fair gods.
being carried from an eagle onto a mountain, and what was it, Kim Jong Un, wasn't it? That they say the first time he tried golf, he got 18 hole in ones.
Yeah.
Like, what a boss!
And he doesn't poop.
Oh, aye, that's right. And he invented the hamburger. Yeah.
Well, from the look of him, you can tell he invented the hamburger.
This is the best thing ever. But the best part is, I'd be curious to know, like, did many North Koreans even try a burger? So is it like this mystical food?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like a unicorn or the.
Yeah, no, because like you hear that apparently they're living in total poverty, so it's not like you can go fancy McDonald's tonight.
I mean, there's that woman, was it Yowlin Park? I don't know and like to the point, and this will be quite gruesome to some folks, but the fact that they were, collecting human feces for fertilizer, and like that's the level of poverty and hardship, yeah. Which if you were to ask any farmer or any scientist, they would say, yeah, that's definitely not good for you, but they obviously have no other means to fertilize their crops.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. We don't know how much we're living really over here.
We don't, well, yeah, that's not good shit.
Nope, certainly not.
Literally in this case.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, in case anyone can see why I've got bruises on my leg, it's because I was doing weighted pull-ups.
Okay.
And because well, so long story.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Like, it's been so long since I've properly exercised and forgetting the flipping movements.
I know it's because you've got a weighted belt hanging between your legs and you've got weights. So rather than to stop the pendulum effect, I'll be slam, and I must bruise very easily.
Well, there, like your shins, there's absolutely no muscle there, like, so it's just going to go
just straight on the bum.
Yeah.
So because Maggie's like looking at my legs, going, "What have you been doing?" I'm like,
"You've been fighting."
I'm going. I know. She's like, I'm joking with her, saying, "Are you worried that people are going to think you've been battering me behind closed doors?" But yeah, I know it blows your mind whenever you think how lucky you are with where you grew up in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Yeah.
But that Beast of No Nation, that's right, the one I mentioned.
Yep.
It was the whole story. Now it doesn't say that it's based on actual events or whereabouts it's being set, but you can tell it's
maybe not all happened to this one group of people or one person, but it's probably like a collection of stories and they've just brought them together.
Yeah, it's set in Africa, and it's meant to be the whole thing of the way there would have always been issues with like parts of Africa where there would have been like civil wars, like Robert Mugabe and all that. So you sort of get that it's not setting it in a particular region. It's
sort of not naming names, but
yeah. So it's about like the way you'd have someone like kid, effectively what you'd say war orphans. The ones that you get, like there's a kid that's maybe like 8 or 9 being handed an AK-47 and all.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, that's pretty much what it's all based on. So following this kid and like what happens when like the family gets completely the family thing goes out the window. But it was a good film. Idris Elba's in it. Trying to think if there's anyone else you would know. I think it was really Idris Elba's probably the biggest name in it, but it was a good film. But yeah, again, quite gritty. But again, probably because it's the things it shows you for a 15, it is pretty harrowing. But part of you would go, oh well, it's a work of fiction. But then part of you could go, it's not far. It's not far from belief that things maybe worse than this. Even
well, see that's the scary thing. Like you think about the worst things that you see in movies, and it's probably a fraction of some of the stuff that goes on in the world, and that's maybe a very morbid and sad thing to say. But
yeah, well, actually, you look at like some of the things did we mention before about like the things that we're complaining about Game of Thrones?
Yes, yeah,
and like obviously the whole thing of obviously the whole stuff. Obviously, for some reason, I find it weird that stuff bothered people more than like. It's obviously I'm not downplaying it and saying, "Oh, that's not terrible," but that somehow that was even more objectionable than someone being flayed alive.
Yes,
and people being burnt alive. Things that are,
or even someone being married off in order to gain an army and that sort of thing. Like,
yeah,
I don't think people realize the fact that. I mean, part of the reason I think that the Game of Thrones stuff did so well, I think, was because it's the first time that you've actually had like a fantasy show which has been fairly lined up with the realities of like medieval history.
It's not far. It's not too far fetched that you can, that you could see where influences came from. So the whole Red Wedding thing, from what I know, that was meant to have been influenced by something that did happen in Scotland with like two families coming together, and one just decided this is a great opportunity to just wipe them out.
I'm sure it's happened more times than we even know about. Like,
it's just strange whenever people, like, I suppose that's the whole point. People don't get, as if it makes you uncomfortable. If it doesn't make you uncomfortable, then you should probably worry about yourself. That's the whole point. It's
you need something.
A good story should get a reaction from you.
Yes, it should.
If you don't care, then clearly it's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it should offend you, because that's maybe a bad use of term, but it should
provoke a reaction. Definitely,
100%. It needs to sort of, well, if you, again, as you say, if you're not feeling anything from it, then it's not doing its job.
Yeah.
And again, that's why Game of Thrones did so well, was because pretty much every week you were like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Which
not many TV shows can do that. But whenever you're watching, I think that's probably what made. I know, like, you will still get people go, oh, they ruined the ending. But to be fair, I don't know. Like, yes, don't get me wrong. There was probably ways things could have worked out better. But I still think that the reason why it was so divisive was because there was so many people had already all this perfect preconceived notions in their head of what way it was all going to end, and such and such was going to kill such and such was going to marry such and such. It seemed like there was people expecting like happy endings for some characters, and you're like, I think the thing. Well, I suppose.
I mean, it's been about 3-4.
If you haven't watched it by now,
come on now,
turn off. Or
we'll put a spoiler sign up for Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
and you can come back on whenever we stop.
I would say probably the one thing that did drop the ball on was the whole Daenerys thing, because it just felt like. Now I did say to Maggie that you've read the books, obviously.
Yep.
But the whole thing with the prophesized Jorah Ahai or something.
Azor Ahai.
Azor Ahai. But the whole thing that the warrior that was gonna save the world from, and the whole thing that for him to get, was it the sword was gonna be Lightbringer, wasn't it?
Yep.
That for him to attain that, he was gonna have to sacrifice something that he loved or something.
Yeah.
And the wielder of that blade was going to have to be brought back to life.
Aye.
So it was all like pinned it together that it was going to be, when you looked at it from a book standpoint, really it felt like Jon Snow was going to have to kill Daenerys.
Yeah.
And purely so that he could have won over the the White Walkers.
Yeah. I honestly think the major beats that they hit, they could have still hit and it would have been fine. But the problem is, I think they just rushed it too much.
Yeah.
And again, you said with Daenerys, like, all they needed to do to justify her torching King's Landing was almost like the Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers moment, where there's someone with a bow and arrow and accidentally lets go. All it needs to do is just ping off the thing of the dragon.
I for her to set off.
Yeah, because I mean, then it's a justifiable thing. This is her last. She's already lost like 2 or 3 of her children. This is her last child.
Yeah.
And for them to then threaten, that's justifiable. But the fact that everyone lay down their arms and were basically screaming mercy, and then for her to go,
I know, because the only real build up they had was, now fair enough, I know they hinted at it that, like in the 3rd and 4th series, what was it? The Slaver cities. I can't remember the names. You know what? The name will come to me. But the whole thing with her like getting all the slave masters crucified, and put down the road. That was like, I suppose you could argue to be see like, well, I could show you what she's capable of, blah blah blah. And it was just that you had characters like Jorah and Missandei to sort of keep her in check, blah blah blah. But still, it was just and even I know like Jorah died, and then the whole thing with what do you call him? What do you call him? Viserys?
Viserys, yep.
Like her catching on that like he like then she was getting more paranoid that she couldn't trust anyone, and then Missandei got killed. It was just like that's it. Fuck you all.
Aye. Screw you guys.
And it was just the quote. The quote middle-aged Belfast mum, fuck laddie. So I'm not too sure. Like, but I don't think they sort of explicitly painted that with the writing because
no.
It seems like no one ever seems to bring that up. So to me, it's like
it was. I think the issue, and this maybe sounds like a hot take. The problem is they stuck too closely to the books. And then they didn't.
And then
they didn't have anything else to follow with the books because
the source material hadn't been finished.
Yeah, like the source material, there's so many threads. You have the Azor Ahai, you have Jon Snow, you have Daenerys, you have the Stone Lady,
who's not in
the books.
Lady Stoneheart or something.
Lady Stoneheart, yes. So and you have like your man, not your man Greyjoy, the Pirate King.
Oh, why? Yeah. Aeron
Greyjoy. Like, you have all of these different threads and probably dozens more. And then you have like the many-faced god with Arya and stuff like that. And your man, the Baratheon kid. All these threads that in the book sort of wove into the tapestry quite nicely. But then they were wanting to wrap this up in like 6 episodes, including a big battle episode.
So that nullifies any development.
Yeah, and they didn't. I don't think they took enough time to actually. Don't get me wrong; they could have dropped a few of them. People still would have been annoyed, but I just think they didn't have the real depth that
the previous seasons did.
That they were able to draw from with the other books.
I know. I mean, like on the grand scheme of things, the characters that were left, they got sort of there was the characters that you wanted to sort of see get a good deal out of it. Did well, I suppose you could argue apart from Jon Snow, he got short shank, but then he could have got
as soon as the ships went out of sight, as soon as Grey Worm sawed it off, it was just like, right, come on down to King's Landing again, you're grand.
Yeah.
But like I know I was scrolling through Facebook of all things. Do you know the guy who was played Tywin?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently
he said
he wants to basically he's like petitioning for them to like redo them all.
Charles Dance, he's a good actor.
Oh, he's a cracker actor. I always remember he did that one Dracula Untold. Don't know if you saw it.
Yes.
Sort of like I describe it as almost like a guilty pleasure sort of movie, but it was filmed over here.
Was it?
Oh yeah, and I sort of jokingly said to folks, I could imagine him like because it looked like he stepped off the set of Game of Thrones and just walked in here because it's the same time period, so he's still in all the gear.
And same country.
Yeah, so I mean, like, probably didn't even bother getting out of his costume, got a taxi over and into the next studio. But like,
and it was, I imagine, it just takes somewhere like the Shore Road, for Prime Transylvania.
well, it's actually the studio was Orangefield.
Was it?
Aye,
there you go.
I can't remember the name of it, but the studio is just up in Orangefield.
There's an interesting fact. Did you know that? Well, you might have about the Paramount was. I think it was Paramount. Probably was, but Paramount was planning to make its own equivalent of like, effectively the MC universe, but with like the classic monsters.
Oh, that's right.
So that's why Dracula Untold was to be setting up that you guy. I can't remember his name now, but.
He Manly Orlando Bloom.
Yes, yeah. He was gonna be Dracula, and then there was that Mummy reboot that Tom Cruise was in. Yep. So it was gonna set up the Mummy, and then there was something tells me I think that Benicio del Toro one. No, not Benicio del Toro. The werewolf remake.
I think there was talk of like the Swamp Thing as well. If I remember right, like the classic, like again the classic.
There was a creature Black Lagoon, maybe was it?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
But again, never happened because apparently the Mummy
it flopped.
It flopped major. I'd say I don't know why. I don't know. Never seen it myself. It's probably one of the few Tom Cruise films I can think of that probably has flopped. Because usually whenever he's in something, it does all right.
I think it's also because he produces them. so he knows what the people want.
Yeah.
But also, I think the problem is you've got the actual Mummy movies, and they're almost like a cult following.
Yeah.
I love them. Anytime they're on, I have to sit down and watch them.
They're like but they're, I think that's maybe where they're in. Like, the issue was, those Mummy films were their own thing that were different from the old original. I think it was Boris Karloff played the original Mummy, but the old black and white actual horrors, whereas the Mummy films were like a big budget action adventure family film.
Yeah.
So for them to do the Mummy, and I think they even used like the same font and everything.
If I remember right, whether it was the trailer or the marketing, they had that classic, to me, the action Mummy of the face in the cloud.
Aye.
I'm just like,
so
you know what you're doing here. Come on now.
Yeah. So to me, I don't know. It felt like you were wondering who were they marketing it to.
Yeah.
Were they setting up?
Were they trying to like siphon off the fans of the Mummy movie, which you weren't going to get?
No, because it was a completely, because Brendan Fraser. I know it was obviously a different time period and everything, but most people probably,
you'd at least want Brendan Fraser to be in it as a cameo,
or Rachel Weisz and all that, and because they're the people that you associate with it.
But even that one that they based for the Terracotta Army, like the Chinese one, like it didn't do too well, if I remember right. Again, because Rachel Weisz wasn't in it, and I think it's just because it wasn't in Egypt. Like, I think someone made the point that Indiana Jones and the Mummy and stuff are set in that time period for a reason, because that's like the classic adventure time period where anyone could go off into like Egypt or sort of,
because it was the unknown.
Yeah, and I mean, it was almost like the unknown. You could just discover weird and wonderful things, whilst you can't really do that in the modern era, which I can't remember when that third one was based on. It was around like the sort of 60s.
Was it?
It was sort of almost like that sort of. I got like a bit of a Gatsby sort of vibe to it, but I know the Gatsby is 20s.
Yeah,
but I think it was sort of that more opulent sort of feeling to it. Maybe it's also just more modern.
That would make me think it more 60s then.
Yeah, and it's not the same sort of thing of that dusty, grimy, in the dust, finding treasure sort of thing.
They should have, if they were, considering that all the mummies took place in the 20s, they maybe missed a beat with maybe not like having, a sequel, The Nazi, and, having it during the Second World War, not would be a Quentin Tarantino version.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The Fuhrer, gets a hold of Tutankhamun's ashes and resurrects him, to fight the Allies.
Well, sure, that's kind
of... It wouldn't be the most far-fetched.
No.
It sounds like a grindhouse film.
Well, that's kind of the vibe of one of the Hellboy ones, isn't it? Where it's like the old school
Rasputin.
He's sort of like obsessed with the occult and stuff like that, as the Golden Army.
Yep.
Which I always find ironic that apparently the Golden Army is off the Antrim coast.
Oh, I love that. We need to go to Antrim. Yeah.
That's so brilliant.
I know.
So like, again, probably just looking somewhere like kind of exotic for everyone else, but for us it's just
I remember,
so off key.
I remember seeing that in cinema. I went, is this actually taking the piss?
Yeah.
But it was the fact that it was saying it like it was, just saw, New York, London, Antrim. He's like, what?
You're saying this as if people know where that is.
I know. I'm going, oh man, I love Antrim. Have you ever been to Junction 1? What a place.
Nothing there, but
I don't know why I went to sound like a young Jack Nicholson at the end of it. Junction 1, man.
Just a sort of stereotypical American accent.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, Hellboy was great. It's just a shame that they never did a third with Ron Perlman. I never seen that new one that David Harbour did, but I know like I know Skir's a big Hellboy fan, and even he was like, it was like, it's a mess. Yeah. Now I did hear it was a lot more gritty, but I don't know if it's just because the director they had, like the director that has a good director, because he did some really good episodes of Game of Thrones, and he directed The Descent.
Oh yes, yeah.
And that was a few others he did. I'm near convinced it was Neil Marshall directed it, and I think he also did it a film. I don't know if you ever seen a film called Doomsday. It was a weird film. It was like somewhere between. But it was enjoyable. It was like somewhere between Escape from New York, Mad Max, and something else. I think it may have been Underworld.
Okay.
It was like a weird mix, but it was one of those films that, like, I feel like it's probably one that people will, years down the line, go, "That wasn't bad."
Aye. I sort of think with the Hellboy, in a way, the only way I can describe it is campy.
Was it?
No, like I'm sorry, I'm thinking like this the
the
older
Del Toro ones? Yeah,
like, but in a good way, in that it felt like a comic book movie because there's that color
to
it and that sort of levity to it. Whilst you don't, I think the problem is you've got folks who are trying to go for that gritty, grimy, alternative sort of look nowadays, which doesn't serve Hellboy. I think it needs to feel like a comic book.
The strange thing was, apparently, you guy Mike Magnolia that created Hellboy, with regards to that version, was like, "Oh, I think this is a better representation of my work," which I find kind of weird. But like, to me, like, Hellboy 1 was good. Like the what did he call the thing they kept on coming? It was Sam Hain, was it?
You think so?
The thing in the museum in the first one that kept on coming back to life.
Yeah,
I think it was Sam Hain. But like the first one, like you said, it had a bit of you didn't say it had a bit of like an Indiana Jones vibe to it in the first one. Second one felt like it was doing more its own thing, but it was class for it. It's to say, because the designs for the
there was a bit more world building involved, and like I think that's, if you're ever doing a sequel, that's what you need to do. It's not just more of it. It's rather than
expand on it.
Yeah, you can't just build up from the foundation. You need to go down into the sort of underlying story.
And that's why the way it ended and stuff, I was just like, they probably could have run that out with a good third film. But he's a great director, Del Toro.
I think I sort of wonder though, like maybe the newer one didn't do as well because of, it sounds terrible, but because of the earlier versions. Similar with like the Mummy, it's almost like that brand expectation.
Like here's an example of one I think that's an example of that. Judge Dredd and Dredd. I know Stallone was so big, late 70s, 80s and 90s, but and there's a mate of mine, Aaron, he loves Stallone, so he'll not hear a bad word about Stallone, but I mean, like, in terms of how faithful the 90s Judge Dredd was to the comics. Like, I haven't read much of the comics, but in terms of what I know, the fact that he only wore a helmet about 5 minutes in the film is pretty unfaithful, because
it's weird though, because I think I actually have, like, a mate of mine got me like one of the big 2000 AD, but I don't think you need to read that much to get an idea of what
the character's like.
And Stallone, again, good actor, but definitely not true to the actual like comic book.
They had cool elements, like
the big, like, it almost had that sort of RoboCop, like the big mechs and stuff like that.
The ABC robots.
Yeah, like it had the scale almost.
Yeah, it was just I think if maybe a different director, there was certain parts of it did keep the grittiness, like they did have. There was the whole thing with the cannibal family in the waste outside of Mega City one. I can't remember their name, but I remember the one Mean Machine, the one that has the dial in his head.
But what was cool with that, which was actually very comic booky, was very dark sort of concept, but they managed to make it humorous. Which I think that's sort of like those sort of classic era of movies. Especially the sci-fi movies seem to very much do that, where it's very dark but also quite humorous.
I think that's what hurt Dredd though, because and to me, Dredd, for its budget, was a brilliant film. It was to me, it had the tone, like the whole thing of, like, Mega City 1 was just like a complete, like, cesspool. And the whole thing of that tower block, and like Lena Headey was great in it. The whole thing of, I can't remember her character name, but I think it was just Mama something. But the whole thing of her, like, saying that if pretty much putting out that announcement over the tower block that whoever kills those two judges will get so much money. But I mean, the plan was that was going to get turned into a trilogy, and then it didn't do as well. I think the DVD and the Blu-ray sales, because it was one of those films that, people realized actually this was a good film, and there was actual film fans of cult films and fans of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd went out and did buy it. But apparently there's been talks for ages. There's going to be a Mega City 1 TV series.
Ooh.
But the problem is, it's not going to be then focused on Dredd. And again, I don't think Karl Urban's going to be easy. Unless it gets made after The Boys.
Yeah.
And apparently there's rumors that he's going to be cast to be Johnny Cage.
Oh, that's right.
In the next Mortal Kombat film. It's someone I didn't expect him to be going for, but I'd say he's a big good fit because everything that he's in terms of character, he plays Billy Butcher really well. And then, you know what? It was good as Doc McCoy in those Star Trek films for what they were.
Yeah. It sounds silly to say, but whenever he's on screen, you don't look at him as the actor. But you can't recognize him.
He does a good job of. Yeah.
Don't know whether it's just the difference of the beard. Don't know if that makes it, but you wouldn't, if you put the two photos of him on Star Trek and on The Boys side by side, you would think that's not the same person.
You know what? I would even be happy. I'd even be happy if they said we're gonna do an animated series of Judge Dredd, and we're gonna have Karl Urban doing the voice.
Yeah.
Because apparently the talks of the Mega City one is that the last I heard, I haven't seen any more in a while, but the last talks was he knew the character in the film Anderson, the girl. She is an actual character in the comics. She is meant to be like a telepath and all that. Yep. But I think they made in the story that one of her,
she was near the border.
One of her parents is a mutant.
Yeah,
and that's where she got that. But I think that they were going to sort of base it more around that she was. I don't know if they were going to make it that she was going to be the central character, or there was going to be stories of different judges, and maybe she linked them together, which would be a good idea,
like an investigative noir sort of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, he had so much potential there. And you could tie in characters, but there was if they did an animated series, there's the whole thing was that I think the director of that Dredd said that they were wanting to eventually bring in. Have you ever heard of the Dark Judges?
No.
So there was a plot point in it where.
Is that what they sort of hinted with the Dredd movie, where there's the judges who got sort of bought over, or is this more?
These ones were. It was meant to be. There was effectively like a parallel dimension or parallel universe where there's these effectively dark judges where they're effectively just psychotic versions of
crime lords but judges.
But they effectively there's Judge Death and all, and there's it's effectively you could say kind of like the Four Horsemen, and there's four of them.
Yes.
I think there was four of them. But Judge Death's the one that you've probably at some point in your life seen a picture of him. But they were making it out, that they killed everyone that remained in their version of Mega City 1, and they end up somehow getting into that plane of existence and all. But I was always even just that sounds like a cool concept. And then it was meant to be one, and I think it was your guy Garfinis. Well, I don't know if he did that one, but no, Garfinis did Preacher and The Boys and all that.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was him that did this storyline, but there's maybe something about that there's a storyline where something happens. I can't remember who caused it, but there's effectively a nuke dropped on a section of Mega City 1 and there's millions killed. But then something happens that I can't remember if they make it that there's a necromancer or there's something, but next minute, everyone pretty much they got hit by this bomb comes back as zombies. So Mega City 1 flooded by millions of zombies. And pretty cool. But again, I suppose if they ever did a TV series, it would have to get to the levels of The Boys popularity for them to do that.
And it sounds terrible. This might be unfair to say. I think part of the reason why The Boys did so well as a show was because it was almost just as the superhero genre was starting to dip, and because it was just complete parody and
that's the complete antithesis of everything that Marvel is.
So it completely just took off from that, and to a degree, the more messed up it got, that sort of was what got like we're talking about Game of Thrones, it's that reaction of like,
yeah,
oh, flip me, I can't believe they're showing
yeah.
this, you know.
I would say like for a lot of people probably that aren't familiar with the comics would probably that you probably get some people would probably just claim that the boys maybe
it.
shock value for shock value, but
no, that's
but whenever you read the comics, you realize no, this is the tone that they're going for, and you actually realize that even for as messed up as some of the parts in the TV series is,
I think they're holding back. I think for
they are
like, and no disrespect to your man, he's got a dark mind.
Garfinus, yeah.
Like, and
considering if it like parts of the cross that I've seen,
yes,
it's even worse.
It's to say gratuitous would be an understatement. I think. I mean, the fact that the entire point of it is to be gratuitous. That's the entire plot point of the flipping thing.
It takes the whole epidemic, like contagion. Well, it takes the whole like zombie apocalypse to a whole new level.
Well, it certainly makes it truly horrifying.
Yes, way worse because obviously it's meant to be that people are just compelled to do the worst imaginable things to each other,
and also the fact is that they're conscious, so you don't even have that question of, oh, you know, maybe it's not actually them, it's just it's just like an animal.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it's a very cynical view on human nature.
Pretty much. You could pretty much say it's like complete nihilistic, misanthropic. Yeah.
If anything, like, it sounds terrible, but even if it was based on like demon possession, that would be slightly more optimistic. You know what I mean?
I know. No, I know what you mean because you're sort of
you're removing the humanity from it.
You're excusing, whereas obviously you're putting it in the context of that. Yeah, as people just being the worst.
Yeah, worst. The worst of them. The worst that the worst can be, I suppose, rather than the best can be.
Yeah. So if you want to be shocked, probably
I would not.
Or if you don't look at the cross.
To be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. I haven't read them, but I'm just seeing the covers of them. I think is enough.
I think he did the first 2 runs of it. So I think he maybe did about 16 issues, maybe tops. And then after that, Alan Moore kept it going, which I found really surprising because Alan Moore did Watchmen and stuff. But he kept it. I don't know if he, from what I've seen, the parts that I've seen that apparently Garfinus didn't write, he's sort of way kept that sort of bleakness. Then again, I suppose he's maybe, I don't know if he wanted to, if he was approached or if he actively wanted to carry the torch for it or what. But
I think it's almost though, in that world, you're at such depths of depravity as far as like what that show was about. You couldn't not write that way, if that makes sense, because it would feel like a completely different series.
It would feel like a betrayal of what it was, of the universe.
Yeah, like there's no way you could hide from it really, because it is so overt.
Yeah,
it's nastiness.
Did you know that there's a film inspired by it?
Oh, good grief!
I think it's. Oh, what country is it from? I can't remember now if it's Philippines. I think it's from the Philippines.
Right.
But it's called The Sadness, and it's the exact same principles as what that is. Now, it is still, there's still some pretty fucked up parts, but I think they probably kept it within the realms of straying into becoming OTT or too far-fetched. But it's not to say that it's still not.
I think it's probably just enough. It's enough to make people feel very uncomfortable. I think in film it's actually a bit harder because you're almost leaning towards if you go too far, you've actually lost the audience that you want to show it to. It becomes almost that, like a snuff film, for lack of a better word, like a professional snuff film. Whilst if you're wanting it to be more of a mainstream audience, or at least like a niche mainstream audience, you do need to dial that back a bit and make it a little bit more subtle. At least subtle compared to the actual crossed comics.
Yeah, it's a good film if you're into that sort of thing, but it's not. It's definitely because I think the way they changed it, called The Sadness, was that the way in the crossed, if someone's catch the thing they've literally got to cross.
Aye. Which again, it falls in line with your man's very cynical view of like religious things.
You get that with Preacher as
Yeah.
well. Yep. Whereas in the film, from what I recall, it's called The Sandless. I think this is the odd time you see people that are
Like a tear sort of thing.
yeah. So it's sort of what replaces it. But I feel like it's probably one that they could probably at some point probably do a second or third. But again, it's whether or not. I don't know whether or not it'd be one of those ones where I don't know if people have had that, where if you watch a film and there's certain levels of violence you become desensitized, or whether or not even still by the end you're still like on edge.
Again, I think it touches on that balancing act where, like, you think of something like The Untouchables. Was it The Untouchables? The Expendables, sorry.
Yeah.
Where they're cutting through swathes of people,
and you
just don't
like,
feel a thing.
Because just
whilst you could have one person fighting another person for a good 15-20 minutes, and you feel every punch and you feel every like grapple,
like The Raid or John Wick.
Yeah, exactly. You feel that weight of it, and so to actually make people feel uncomfortable with like that gratuitous violence, it's a delicate balancing act where you're needing to like drag it out almost in a messed up way, whilst also getting the scale of what's actually going on there as well.
Yeah, that was
a tricky thing to really manage.
That was maybe the only thing about it was it hinted at effectively the breakdown of society and how bad it was going, but the only thing I got was that well, to be fair, there was a few parts that sort of show you on the level of scale of how dire it had gone. But I think if they went even further into maybe like taking it away from those characters and like showing you, it would have been even better. But maybe
again, sort of like very personal, very intense,
following certain characters,
then massive scale. It's almost that reflective moment. Oh flip, this is happening everywhere.
You know, like that one, that Korean show on Netflix, We Are All Dead. Like it was good for that. I would recommend it. It's it's got a lot of tense moments and it's really well done because again, it's one of those ones you watch it and if you get invested in the characters and that, then to me, it's probably saying something that's really good. Do
you want we top up a notes?
I'm actually trying to think. There was another one that I was going to recommend. And try and stray away from horror because horror is a bit of one of those niche genres.
See, this is the thing, like, and I'm sure people say, "Oh, this is very unprofessional for a podcast. We're topping up drinks as we're talking."
Oh well, we don't have waiters yet.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we need that's the next level. We silver platter. But like, I'm
certainly, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Off camera,
martini, sir.
Shaken, not stirred.
But like,
I'm trying to think though. And send that to like the majority of things. See, there's the thing. I'll go out of my way to watch. I'll try and watch the weird stuff that I know Mikey would have no interest in. If I think like it's a film that she's gonna enjoy, I'll be like, I'll keep it on the back burner in case there's a night.
It's like you have the afternoon or evening to yourself. It's you watch the more obscure things.
Like I'm not gonna say to her, do you want to watch a subtitled Norwegian film? Because you can be like,
oh hell no.
Unfortunately, this is the age where mobile phones exist.
Well, no, like I mean, one story comes to mind for me. A few of my mates went to see that one Southpaw.
Yeah,
and like it was a very heart-wrenching moment. It's for those. I would say even if you don't like a boxing movie,
that's good.
It's a good movie,
drama.
Good drama, and like it does sort of tug at your heartstrings. And like a real heartfelt moment. I was like, fighting back tears in the cinema.
And you turn around and everyone's looking at their phone?
No, I look forward. Through the flipping thing of the seats, I see some woman flipping through Facebook, and I'm just like, I'm going to go up behind this.
Yeah.
Like, come on, why are you spending money to stare at your phone?
I do believe, like, it's a real, like, addictive personality thing there.
I think it's...
If you were to take your phone off someone and just fuck it out the window, they would instantly be like, they wouldn't know what to do. It would. It'd be...
Well, it's a serotonin thing, or whatever the happy chemical in your brain is, or flipping through I mean, there's that one, the social dilemma or something like that. The Netflix made it's like a docu-series thing, and basically it's them talking about how they designed these things to be addictive.
Effectively that your body chemistry becomes dependent on it. Yeah, because I mean, the amount of times that you'll maybe find that you open up an app and you're going, what am I doing here?
I'm terrible with it for the shorts and stuff like that. So like YouTube Shorts and TikTok and stuff, which I've even recognized like I'm maybe in a worse mood for doing that later on in the day. It isn't good for you. So it's everything in balance, or focusing on stuff that is actually like making you feel good, whether it's more comedy stuff or things like that.
Yeah.
Because it can very easily just, you like one thing and it takes you down this rabbit hole of negativity.
Of poo.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just like controversial things where people get very irate. It's not worth it.
I think there's a bit of a culture of that in YouTube.
It's that clickbaity stuff.
It's like, you know what? Like as bad as it sounds, there is some of the challenge with some of the videos. It does keep you abreast of things, and usually, for the most part, I like to sort of keep an open mind. I'll listen to their point of view. If I see their point of view, I'll be like, okay, I agree. And then there's ones that, if it seems like they're outrageous, and I'm going, you're blowing this out of proportion.
Yeah.
It's not really a big a deal. But yeah, there's a bit of a culture of like you say, clickbaity outrage thing.
It's like a culture of controversy.
Yeah, and I'd say there's maybe quite a lot of content creators who depend on that now.
Yes.
And I'm sort of thinking, like the equivalent of if someone is downbeat all the time, if you're sat beside someone in work 8 days a week, and every time you talk to them, it's something negative, I think eventually you're going to hurl yourself out a window or take a chair to them.
Aye, 100%.
So like I wonder, like long term, at wearing your mood down or your brain down, it's going to have an effect on your outlook on things.
100%.
So I don't know. I would say that probably applies to that sort of type of content, and that being your only source of entertainment.
I think you do need the exercise discernment whenever you're, because again, I step back from watching a lot of like the film critics and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's too easy to.
And I mean, I'm not there to be honest. If I was to watch it like their stuff, they're not wrong a lot of the time, but
sometimes you wish you weren't. Oh.
Yeah, like I think it's even just constantly hearing about how movies are bad or how movies are going in a bad direction. It isn't good for your enjoyment. Again, I'm not that massive a movie watcher, as is probably obvious from this podcast. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, I just want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Again, after the fact, I'll happily tear it apart and analyze it and whatever. But I don't want to go into a movie with preconceived notions that other people have put into my ear.
100%. No, well, that's actually funny you mention it. My mate Aaron was saying about that. It was, what film was it we were talking about? I think it might have actually been that new Evil Dead, or it might have been John Wick. There was one of them that I think it was Evil Dead, that he went of his way to make sure that he didn't read any reviews or anything to sort of, maybe be influenced, but then, read reviews after.
Yeah.
Like I would maybe look at a general score, and I would factor in critic and user, because
it's a good abstraction. So it is.
Now I would take things like Rotten Tomatoes with a pinch of salt, because I've heard of too many cases now where it's like they're saying it's clearly there's some sort of score.
Yeah, the critics have got paid off, and also people have maybe taken umbrage. Like the people have taken umbrage and review bombed. So there's too much bias on both sides of that like review split.
And then what happens now is also another development recently was, I haven't seen it, I can't comment, but that people were saying about the audience reviews of the Little Mermaid remake. They were like 95% positive, and people were pointing out, they going, this is even higher than the animated one that's based on. And you're like, what is the likelihood that the user rating, because considering as well, like the amount of downvotes on the trailers and the promos, it was a given that even the ones that weren't even had no intention of watching it, they were just going to automatically give it like a 0 out of 10 or whatever. They were going to still be bringing that aggregate down. So for it to be 95, it's just like
it's it's a mathematical impossibility. And again, you could maybe say, oh well, maybe they tried, to work out who haven't seen, like basically people who give it 0 out of 10, even though they didn't see it. There's no way on earth that they could do that.
No.
And so they just took it. Again, tinfoil hat moment, to cover myself here, but that sort of indicates that they just deleted all of the negative reviews.
Well, sure. Look at the Brains of Power and what was the other one? It may have been that Santa Claus series. The one that Seth Rogen done.
Oh yes,
like it was
Netflix one.
It was apparently like one of the most.
Oh, and Sarah Silverman.
It's like 1.5 out of 10 or something. But on IMDb. But yeah, it was. There was something. There was Brains of Power and something else, but pretty much there was like people were picking up to say that they believed that the Rotten Tomatoes had actually put a cap on more scores coming in, because it was just like it just seemed to just. I can't remember.
It was tilting too far in the direction.
I can't remember what the evidence was, but pretty much like people taking a screenshot of it at one point in time and then another, and it being like a completely different vote count, and it showed the 2 times you're going. It was like they've removed so many votes.
Well, I mean, the fact that YouTube removed their dislike stuff.
Well, the logic behind that makes total sense, because obviously, the more like something has, then on the YouTube algorithm it gets circulated more.
Yeah.
So the more down votes and the dislikes, the less likely it is to show up in the algorithm. So then that in effect hurts.
But the problem is that the dislike
circulation,
the dislike metric still exists. I mean, the people have the extensions, and from what I understand,
that's right.
Like the creator of the video can still see it.
Yep.
So one argument at the time was, oh, this is to help the mental health aspect for a lot of creators, which is, if that was true, that would be a fairly genuine thing. Let's be honest. Someone who's grafting, making videos day in, day out, and they get pooped on, that's going to be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But if they're still going to be seeing all of that negativity, and they it sounds ridiculous, but they can't even like express that to their fans, because the fans can't see that normally.
Yeah.
It puts them in an actually more difficult situation to build that communication and rapport with their fan base.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of people seem to theorize that they thought that the whole removal of the downvote, obviously, like you say, it is still possible to get those extensions. You can still see them. But for the average YouTube user who, say, viewing it on Xbox or PlayStation, for example, that they wouldn't have those extensions available.
Yeah.
That there's a chance that they're trying not. It's like a form of damage control. Like
well, it's let's be honest. You back in the day, if you jumped onto a video and it was ratioed, so massive dislike to like ratio, you're probably going to click off it.
Oh, 100%. Because you're like, well, this is poo.
Yeah, it's an indication of something. This isn't worth my time.
Yeah.
Whilst, and again, let's be honest, if it's a big company that has a big trailer, they probably don't want. If people see that's been ratioed, they're more likely then to click a video reviewing the thing that is ratioed the other way, because there's actually going to be a breakdown explaining what the problem is, rather than just watching something which apparently is poo.
Yeah.
According to the people, No, it's the Rings of Power. I think was a very interesting one, because it was the amount of times people were quoting that Tolkien
about evil cannot imitate,
or evil cannot create. It can only
destroy.
Destroy.
Yeah. And to be fair, there's like Jay would be. Yeah. I would usually find Jay's quite forgiving of his taste. And like, even whenever he was saying that it looks nice, but there's not really much to it, I was like, well, there we go. That's enough for me.
Again, I think at this point, and I mean, I've heard that sort of, not argument, that's the wrong way to put it. I've heard that point being made a lot for a lot of modern sort of shows.
Style, no substance.
Yeah, they look good. They're saying the special effects are great. The costumes are great and all. But then that's all they can really say. The problem is, though, that we're at the point of like diminishing returns, where yes, don't get me wrong. These companies have the budget to like dump a floppity jillion dollars into creating something great. But
Which, from a technical standpoint, you're like, oh, well done.
yeah, the nerd in me is like, oh, that's sweet, but it doesn't make it a good show.
Nah.
Like at the end of the day, I think Rings of Power was probably one of the. I think it was like record-breaking amount of money that they spent.
Oh,
on that.
like $2 billion
It's
or
a
something.
sinful amount of money, like, and it still looked kind of cartoony for it being a live action.
Seeing some of the clips and like some of the dialogue at times, I was just like, even though I didn't watch all, there was at times going, like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
And it was I sort of wonder though, were the hamstrung? We might have discussed this before. Were the hamstrung with them only buying the appendices?
Yeah.
Because they didn't really have a plot to work with.
To me, like it's silly though. That a company, it'd be like the equivalent of like it'd be like Amazon buying the rights to Tintin, but that then they weren't allowed to use Tintin in their story.
Yeah.
You'd be like,
yeah,
why are you making this?
Yeah. Like, I wonder who on earth signed that, because let's be honest, that budget and something like the Silmarillion, that would have been absolutely fantastic. It would have been the problem is it would be a very artsy sort of movie.
Because
you're talking like,
because the way you were describing it is effectively like mythology, isn't it?
It's like, it's the, I mean, the amount of memes around of people who have like the people who own the Silmarillion book versus those who have actually read it is, it's interesting.
Because I've heard people saying it can be quite difficult to digest.
It's very, put it this way, you can see the heavy like Christian influences, because it's very much this aspect of Iluvatar creating all of the sort of angels, and the way they describe it is like, one song, but then you have, is it Malekith, I think, who basically goes against the tune of the people and wants to make his own song.
So it's like the devil, then?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the Christian similarities, which naturally he was Roman Catholic, I think, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
But so very mythical, would have to be very abstract, because if it wasn't very abstract, it would seem weird.
Have you tried to do it in a prose?
Yeah.
So it's like theology, kind of?
It is theology almost, yeah. And the problem is I don't think you could actually do it as a film, because people would think you were being preachy. Even though that's true to the source material.
I know what you mean. The people that for some reason have it like an extreme aversion to anything Christian, but they're for some reason absolutely okay with every other, like
everything else in the world.
I don't get that. To me, if you have an issue with one religion, have an uppance with them all.
Yeah, but equal opportunity sort of sectarianism.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not religious, but I think unfortunately, every religion has examples throughout history that someone's like contorted it to do some bad shit.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that for any viewpoint of the world, or any bit of something that you can use to confuse someone, you can twist people to suit your own evil ends. Yeah. Really.
Well, there's a quote for you. Voltaire.
Mm-hmm.
Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, and it's the challenge.
I feel so clever saying that.
Voltaire, that's a queer quote, like, so it is.
The only reason that's in my head is because I read it as a quote once and went,
I like
dead
that.
On.
Nice.
And I worked it in liaison.
Nice one.
So now it's like
it's in the web of your brain.
Maybe this is what I should have done for like revision. Okay. Algebra, A plus.
Quadratic equation.
Yeah, going, oh shit, it doesn't rhyme. So that was, I don't know. Whenever I read that quote, I was like, that could apply to quite a lot.
And that's the thing, and it's down to sort of my go-to word is discernment. You do need to. Obviously, there's an element of faith, but you also need to read things yourself and decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Like you can't just take. I mean, put it this way: you can't just take what I say at my word. Like if I quoted something from scripture, you can't really just take what I say as what that interpretation is. You're better to go and look at it yourself and and research yourself.
You've pretty much summed up modern society though, because you get people maybe take someone on face value or good faith, and you have to always bear in mind, does someone have something to gain from it? Do they have an ulterior motive that they could be feeding you lies or shite?
I mean, the way,
or maybe they're just not.
They're just genuinely misinformed, and it's coming from a good place. Like the way I sort of described it, if I use the initial quote that I had in my head. If you're looking for the perfect church, look in an empty room. Because if you step in there, you're stepping in with all your baggage and all your own messed up perspectives.
You're not being influenced by other parties.
Yeah. So, I mean, human beings. What is it to err is human, and you can do the same with any sort of organized group because it's just a collection of people. So that's why you do. Again, I'm getting a little bit preachy, I suppose, but you do need something that is something that's above sort of your own perspective to a degree, or something bigger than yourself that you can actually like aim for. Otherwise, it's just a mixture of different perspectives, sort of at loggerheads, really. Which maybe that's what we're at on the internet these days.
People have forgotten to listen rather than going la 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 la, and then yelling back. And
then they retreat into their echo chambers where peace and quiet.
I know. What's that? Say the thing that I agree with.
Oh heck yeah.
I suppose that's the whole thing where, like you said about the whole thing of when there's groups of people and how things can go. I suppose that's why, like, I don't know, communism doesn't seem to have worked in any countries, because ultimately whoever gets put into power, if they're compromised, if they're flawed, if they're corrupted, then
I mean
the people that they're above are gonna suffer for it.
Yeah,
I mean, like people. I tend to find it's funny because the majority of people that are in favor of things like communism tend not to work.
Yeah, they tend not to work, and they tend to, for lack of a better word, feed off the fat of the ones who do work.
Yeah, and this is where then you tend to find that whenever the people that take those stances, that when they're in uni and when they get full-time employment, suddenly those ideals suddenly don't matter anymore. I wonder why.
Because they realize, this whole work thing, for one thing, it's kind of hard, but also kind of satisfying. Also, I have money now. I kind of like this money thing. I maybe don't want to be not having this anymore.
I want the state to take a percentage of it?
Aye.
I know.
How quickly does the people like gurn and complain then whenever they look at their taxes at the end of the year? Like, they're taking how much off me?
I know. On the grand scheme of things, like, we get taxed at the bum hole, but you think like it could be worse depending on what structure you're.
And what we get back out of it is, good return on investment, for lack of a better term.
I know. It's like, but imagine that, you lived in a communist country, you're a doctor, you spent years studying, and someone just enforcing that, going, right, we want 40% of your earnings. Who's that going to?
Don't worry about it.
Well, how much is that guy giving? Nothing. Aye. He doesn't work.
Aye. He's an artist.
Actually, I do wonder, what way does it work in terms of communist countries? Do you just have to, like, effectively fight for survival, or
Well, like, there's a few folks that I worked with who were living in the Czech Republic at the time, and sort of they were, I don't know what age they were, but they were sort of living at the tail end of being part of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
The way they described it, you had to put in basically a form and argue your case to get a car. So, like, something that we all take for granted, for, like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You do a few paper rounds nowadays, you can buy a bit of a
runaround.
Yeah, you get a runaround, and you have your independence. There, you had to go through the government to get a car, and then also you would have been rationed on your petrol.
Really?
Take this with a pinch of salt. This is fragments of information, but
if you listen to all those conspiracy theorists on Facebook, they'd have you believe that that's the direction our governments are going to.
Aye.
You're not going to be able to leave your house for 20 miles and you'll get fined.
That's it. They're going to track you, put you on a train.
I know. And
they're listening in.
And they'll recycle you because,
they'll turn you into Soylent Green.
Yeah. I know. We'll run out of compost. We need people.
Into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's vegan friendly, we swear.
Yeah. Do you like corn?
It's a terrible joke, but I wonder if people is technically vegan. It's not animal products.
True. Yeah. Does it count as recycling then?
That's true, yeah. What colour bin do you put them in? Taking a dark turn.
Yeah.
To be fair, we are talking about communism, and whenever you look at the history of communism, it's pretty flippin' dark.
Yep. Yeah, there's one you should look up. Pretty grim. Was what was it? Was it Nazimo Island?
Right.
Well, anyway, it was, long story short, it was this like isolated part of Russia. It might have been in Siberia.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, long story short, it was a classic case of Stalin. They left so many undesirables.
Okay.
The
Russian Australia.
So effectively, it could be, deemed as, of people that are speaking out against my regime. Treason. So I think there was it 6,000? But they were taken out to this remote location, and effectively this place was run very poorly. There wasn't enough rations. There was nothing. Effectively, these people landed in the middle of this harsh wilderness, hostile environment, and there was the way, even people being shipped off the place like Auschwitz and all, there was accommodation. There was as much as you were treated terribly. These people didn't. There was effectively nothing there.
Aye, it was literally just like a desert island to a degree.
But it got to the point, I'd say, just people there was people dying on the way to there due to malnutrition, and
that's the thing.
Stuff like that.
You sort of think getting washed up on a desert island, that'd be grand. I'd be able to build this and that, but you're not there. It's not as if you're teleported. Plop, there you are in your current state of fitness.
It's not like Minecraft. You walk up and start punching a palm tree.
No. There's a story of how you got there. Either even in a shipwreck situation, you've been battered and bruised by the waves, so you're not exactly at tip-top physical condition to be chopping down trees or, chasing a wild boar through the forest.
And you may not have the luxury of having Wilson to talk to.
Exactly. Wilson!
But yes, this place, I apparently this. There's stories and saying about it got to the point that the guards then realized that they were finding, obviously each day then they were effectively going around and going, right, let's count how many died today.
Aye.
But then finding after a certain day that there was effectively what looked to be flesh missing from, so people that were turned into cannibalism.
Aye.
So people had been people that were caught on indulging into cannibalism, they were executed. Then there was people tried to swim from this island to somewhere else, but obviously this was below degrees temperatures.
Aye, so they got frozen.
So
again, malnutrition, so it wasn't as if they even had the physical strength to probably do it.
Exactly.
Just desperation.
But it got to the point, I can remember how long it took before they realised this has been an absolute disaster.
Aye.
Well, put it this way, it's bad whenever the Soviets themselves try to hide it in their their archives.
Aye.
But I think that they estimate, I can remember, if they find out the videos watched, it said from the 6,000, there was it was either 1,200 or 2,000 returned. So all those other ones.
Aye.
But obviously the point being made that, those ones that did survive, were healthy. So how did they?
Yes. And again, I always sort of think, that's terrible, but I don't think you could ever judge anyone for doing that, because at the end of the day, none of us have been that starving.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, probably all of us would do the exact same thing to survive. You can't judge those folks for doing it.
I think the worst part is you probably know from people you work with or people you've ever dealt with or went to school with or whatever, that you know the exact people who would be the quickest ones to turn around and suggest, I think we should start eating each other.
Literally, not everyone's feet have touched the sand, and they're already eyeing up with the flipping knife and fork in hand.
There's just those people that, you know, just the moment that something is like, you know, something's making them unhappy, that suddenly fuck everyone else.
Yeah,
it's instantly deemed my happiness is priority here. Well, regardless.
I mean, that's the looting aspect. You know, as soon as like the power goes out somewhere, people start looting the place. It's that sort of mentality which makes things go from bad to worse.
See, you saying that as an analogy, it just made me think of a really funny Beavis and Butthead skit that happened where the power went out and they just wander out of the house because obviously there's no TV to keep them distracted, and they're walking through town and everyone's just looting everywhere. And they obviously have like no idea what's going on, and Butthead's like, it must be like one of those Midnight Madness tales. and Beavis like, we're slashing prices, everything must go. And but it's like seeing like these two guys like smashing a shop and run out across the street with a TV, and you see them run off screen, going, hey, where you going with that TV? And all he hears the police going, freeze, and the oh, never mind. But yeah, sure. I always love that. It's like, especially in America, and I could see there are legitimate reasons at times why people feel compelled to go batshit crazy. But I feel like stealing stuff from an electrical store isn't. I don't see what your point is. You're proving you're effectively just robbing some guy that owns a shop, maybe.
Yeah, and it's always within your own like estate, for lack of a better term. Well, sure, you're robbing from your own.
Over here, as a prime example, we've seen it before, like stuff kicking off, and people burning out small businesses. Like what do you call that Chinese town beside White Abbey?
Oh yeah,
is it New Century? I
think so. Yeah,
that one. That was pre-burnout. that was.
Oh, it's good Chinese.
It was good. Yeah. From what I've heard, it's okay now. I think we had from it once since it reopened, because it was just like, oh, it's returned from the ashes like a phoenix. But from what I remember that time, it was okay. Fair enough, it might have been an off night, but
also my sort of cynical side a lot of times is, was it deliberately burnt out for insurance sometimes? I mean, sure, you've got that, but where was it got burnt? Was it North Street there in Belfast? There was a fire.
Was it?
And like first thought was insurance job, like
going, oh, I'm safe. Oh, that security tape just got caught in the fire. I don't know why he's from New Orleans. This guy that I've constructed in my head. I see, my business on fire.
I'm just thinking of you're the chicken from
Futurama. I know. Stop badgering though. And this badger, where? I can think of a funny story though you said about that. Around that time, so obviously I'm gonna give fake names, but you know, because you never know who watches these things. But it said a friend called Roger, and he apparently knew someone that was connected around. I don't know if you recall that time, the last time. I can't remember what it was about. That time that all the buses were being burnt out and all. It was
that to do with the Union flag on City Hall?
I actually think it was before this.
Was it? Oh, okay.
So I can remember what it was. Something that clearly people were upset, but they were told to be upset, but they didn't know why. It was probably one of them ones. We need the right. Why? Just because we said so. So this guy Roger was coming home up on a transit bus for a certain route.
I remember you saying, yeah.
And fella steps on in a balaclava and says, right, everyone off, we're burning out this bus. And the guy Roger turn around and going, William? And him lifting the balaclava and going, how do you know that was me, from his voice? And you're like, this is what we're dealing with.
That's a proper, like, that sounds like a sketch.
Does. Like, you know, it literally sounds like something off, like in my headpiece or something.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's part of me is like, Oh god! And then part of me is like, that's funny.
It is funny. Like, I mean, let's be honest. That we're not exactly career criminals over here. You know,
it's no,
it's a part-time job.
I know. It's a hobby, mate.
It's a passion.
I know. We've got Blood Bowl. I mean, when people have got burnout buses.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
We all have our interests.
Speaking of all that, I just thought during the week about, whenever you're driving through Belfast and you maybe see like a security car or a van and it'll say, "How's my driving?"
Aye.
I'll give a phone number. I'm just wondering, has there ever been at any point some wee chav has noted in a number and like phoned it and it picks up, "You're driving with shite." Yeah. Just hung up.
Aye. Let's be honest, you're never gonna ring that because they were driving well.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
know.
Like,
good job.
It's like you followed the speed limit, you signalled whenever you're driving.
I know it turns out there's a real like jobs for if I had driving instructor,
yeah.
I was behind you, going for East Belfast and there was once or twice you forgot to indicate, if you were taking your test now.
I'll give you like 3 minors, but there was a major in there,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was gonna make a bad joke there and say, I wonder how many minors were on Philip Schofield's driving test.
No! Oh dear! Oh, that's terrible.
I don't know if you'll cut that out, but
no, that's staying in. That's too good to not keep in. Plus,
like that,
slap it into him, like
that meme doing the rounds of him superimposed and said WeGrewManyChild.com instead of WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Oh dear me! Oh, I had like all those flipping businesses that like had them on their adverts. I'm sure they're kicking themselves now. Like,
I feel sort of conflicted because with that whole thing, there's part of me is like, okay, no one's come out to. It hasn't come out from the horse's mouth to say, he did anything illegal, and I agree. But the only problem is there's apparently footage of him like randomly being spotted having dinner just with that wee guy when he was apparently much younger before. And again, the fact that then the moment he was 18, he was straight away. And if he lied that whole time about having that affair, the thing is, whenever someone's been caught out lying once or twice, you can't really. You have to take everything with a pinch of salt. So unfortunately,
let's be honest. Even if he, to the letter of the law, did nothing wrong, he was still, by the law, grooming, leading up to that.
Yeah,
like there's no real.
The thing, one way or the other. The strange comparison I've seen people saying is that there's been a few people saying, there's dirty old men do it with younger girls. I'm going, yeah, but as we've seen the last few years, those people are starting to get, brought to justice as well,
and rightly so.
You're getting like Prince Andrew,
mm-hmm.
and then Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah,
got his comeuppance. Yeah. So we can't turn around and like you can't just make a vague saying, well, there's loads of people get away with younger going. Well, give us the examples then.
Also, that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making a good point. You're making a point that this is something that we need to address, regardless of the gender of the people involved,
and regardless of industry, because it helps. Well, we know for a fact it happens in music industry and it happens in Hollywood.
It'll happen in business. It'll happen in basically any organized structure because there's a power dynamic.
People exploit it.
Yeah, there's a power dynamic that people can exploit, and it's up to self-policing to a degree, but it's also up to people to call it out.
Yeah,
like if you see one of your peers doing something dodgy behavior, you call them out or you get them sacked, because you can't really you can't leave that door half open.
Yeah, I would like to think the people that have the audacity that do something like that, they won't be so confident that they'll feel like they could do it, openly and not be challenged. I would like to think that we're in a society now that if someone is going to be like openly sick, someone is going to be openly sexist, someone's going to go, call them out on it.
Yeah.
That's why, like, whenever, do you remember that there was the whole controversy at him with the Gillette advert?
Oh, aye.
Yeah. And like I there was some of the examples in that video. I was just like, I don't know who you're aiming this at. This is the wrong audience. But I don't know. I don't know what they were getting at, but like the part where there was the part where a woman's walking down the street and this guy just starts to go following and his black friend's going, "Whoa, buddy!" Now clearly going, "What? So what was his plan there exactly?"
I was going to follow her down an alleyway or something.
Yeah. And then this guy just happens to be there, looking at for potential rapists.
It's
going, "Whoa, buddy! I know you're my mate, but we'll draw the line at that." I don't know. I just think that advert, looking back now, I remember going, I'd say that's going to age like milk.
Oh, I think there is let's be honest, there's a place for that kind of advertising, I think, but it needs to be done, well, again, just with respect to everybody involved.
I think it's whenever you're being talked down to by corporations.
Yes.
No one, I think as well, because usually you tend to find that corporations at some point or other have lost their way, or they've got some shitty, unethical practices.
Well, let's be honest. Where is Gillette stuff being made? Well, it's being made in China. People sweatshops, slave labor, young children who are, let's be honest, will have flipping netting out the window so they don't off themselves.
I jump out the windows. That's right.
Like,
I know we can do better. Yes, you can, Gillette.
Yes, you can. What is it? Don't throw stones in glass houses.
Yeah.
Like, and I think they could have done much better. If they wanted to do that message, they could have done much better as far as, but then again, like, Gillette's never really been one that you would, it sounds terrible, it's not really their place to do a message, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you could say, to be honest, if they wanted to be a bit more progressive, you could have it where women were using the product. Because let's be honest, like, I've heard of women using men's shavers because it actually does a better job than them shaving their legs or whatever.
Yeah.
So like there's an actual context there.
There's a way to sort of like you say, broaden your market if that's your because ultimately, let's be honest, do you really believe that the companies really truly care about these matters now? That they just see it as a bit like an opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like companies should really just. I know some people would disagree with me. I just feel like companies should stick their nose out of issues that don't concern them, because you effectively, I don't know, you're maybe but at danger of damaging your product image. And
I think if you're wanting to get involved in a particular work,
charity, not patronizing people and talking down to them.
It's especially whenever you're a faceless organization. It's trickier if you are the CEO and you feel strongly about something, then you have a right as a private individual to post about it or just to make a statement or whatever. Fair enough, but
it seems to be the marketing campaigns. Unfortunately, I don't know. To me, it feels like there's maybe people coming fresh out of uni, and you sort of feel like they're probably
they don't have life experience to draw from.
They've got these notions that university lecturers have planted in their heads. That's effectively like it's effectively the equivalent of a hallucinogenic. They're like, "Wow, I'm seeing the world for what it is."
Yeah,
and they feel like I want to feel fulfilled. They've got good intentions. Yes. I want to change the world, but they're maybe like it'd be the equivalent of a bin man coming around your street and informing you, we could be better as men. I'd be going, why are you telling me this, mate?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest.
It's just strange.
How about let's get a coffee first, and then like build up to
a rapport.
Build up to how we can fix the world. You don't really go straight into a conversation with someone telling them how they're doing things wrong and how they need to be better.
Well, that is the quickest way to get someone to completely ignore you.
Yeah.
It's the same as films and TV programs. If you want, like whenever someone's maybe doing a story about racism, do it with nuance, and you make characters that you I don't know, you like warm to, and you go, oh God, seeing things from a character's perspective that's not nothing like what you're used to.
Yeah.
You'll come away from it. You probably will actually find it in a totally different. You will, rather than someone like shoehorning in that's like obvious talking down. Yeah.
And I think it's also, if they genuinely care about sending a message or changing a perspective, doing it in that nuanced way does a better job, because it's going to be closer to home. It's going to be actually more real to life. Whilst if it's very heavy-handed and just forcing it down your throat, it almost starts to touch the line of parody.
Yeah,
and you just don't actually see the terribleness of that reality.
Yeah, well, it'd be the same as like if you have a character that you're meant to be, empathizing with, or effectively, gain a sympathy for or warming to, and they come across as really like standoffish and effectively pig-headed and just generally unlikable character. It doesn't really do the message that you're trying to convey any. It just kills it.
Like, I mean, just an example of that which works, but it's because they're not trying to send a message, would be something like That's Your House. He's very pig-headed and arrogant. The saving grace is he's funny.
Yeah.
But also it's showing the fact that him being like that, he's not a happy person.
Aye.
This is not a person to emulate, which I think you get some characters like, I think it's weird.
Dr. Cox from Scrubs, I suppose, would be like that, I suppose.
Yeah. Like, I think there's certainly a lot of those which in a weird way people start to try and emulate. Like people like sort of like Tommy Shelby from Peaky Blinders and stuff like that. You've got all those sort of memes online, even though the guy is he's an unhappy man.
He's a fucking broken individual. And there's people, I don't know why that annoys me, that the whole time you see some guy on Facebook like taking a still from Peaky Blinders and put a quote over it that's meant to be like they're fucking the male equivalent of a lion. And you're like, you're not really. You're like, I keep my enemies closer than my friends because I'm a leader, or some
just cringy,
copy
pasty nonsense.
You're like, this has got nothing to do with the Piggy Blinders.
Yeah.
Who made this and put it together, and it's like the equivalent of like, girls. Girls will have those throwaway quotes as well, and like, I'm from now on, I'm going to live for me and not for other people. And like you're going,
it's almost the male social media version of Live, Laugh, Love.
Yeah,
sort of thing. It's like, I want to post something, but I don't know what I'll post. Oh, I'll just do this here.
Yeah. So there's no shortage of
like
cringe,
like 2-bit philosophy sort of nonsense.
The guys can post and reshare as well, so it's not exclusive to the genders. It's just there's different types.
Yeah. It's there's different brands of garbage that people post online.
And to be fair, I feel sorry for women, because I imagine in terms of the internet,
flip,
men probably,
like a zoo. It's the only way I could describe it.
I know. I'd say there's probably all varying degrees. There's the lonely ones that probably want to impart their baggage on someone who's loving life. I'm fine. Oh, how about you? And then there's probably going to be like we said earlier on, the guy from the Gillette advert, those ones.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then there's the ones that just, I don't know, that just don't see the person as a person.
Yes.
They see them as like some kind of object or something.
Yeah, it's like it's putting them on a pedestal, but it's almost beyond that. It's treating them like an idol.
Objectification. It's just like, you're talking to a person. This isn't like
this again. Yeah, it's not a character in a show, really. But you saying about the gym, don't know if you ever saw. Do you know, again, all those sort of quotes that you see people spray painted on like the walls of gyms? Those motivational,
Some of those are funny.
You quit when your body quits and stuff like that. But I've seen them superimposed over folks drinking. So this is like, basically it's just like, you quit whenever your body, you don't quit when your body quits.
That's like, if Kirker ever watched those, I think we need to make those for him. That's it. That would have been a t-shirt for him for his birthday. just a picture of, yeah, like you say, some guy doing a bicep curl, but just like Photoshop a Stein in his hand.
Yeah. Oh, they're just like the more obscure and like overly like dude bro Chad they were, the more they made sense in a weird way for just like being superimposed over like a pub scene.
Yeah,
it was funny. Like
actually, though there's a cringy one. I suppose again, it's not exclusive to one gender, but I would say maybe more guys do it. The whole um posting friends from the gym every time they go.
Aye.
Um,
or again, whenever check-ins were popular, it was always checking in at the gym.
I know if I don't check in, it doesn't. I didn't go then.
I said if I don't take photos, and there's no point in me being here. I'm just like
I'll sit on this bench here. And meanwhile, there's probably in their selfie, there's probably some guy who's like just 3 times their size, looking down, going, "I'm gonna fucking eat you." Yeah,
just like the Undertaker behind him is like
some guy that looks like he's he's taught the Navy SEALs. He's just he's an instructor. He's just looking down, going, "I could fold you." Because there's people who go the hours, and like I'm a small person, but like there's other people you're seeing, and they're maybe sitting on an equipment, and they're maybe sat in their phone most of the time. You're going, you could have, for the life of time you were here, I've probably done.
I'm halfway
I've
home.
I've probably done 5 or 6 exercises while you've been sat there.
See, that's the thing. Like, whenever I did start going to the gym a bit more, I was still very much like a military operation. I went in knowing what I needed to get done.
Yeah, that's the best way.
Just like boom, 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 shower, or just straight out. Like it was.
Because you don't want to be there any longer than you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, you feel better for doing it, but it doesn't mean you enjoy doing it.
Like I wouldn't be one of those people that deters people from going. In fact, I'm happy to see people that are out of shape and over out of shape. Out of shape. That's what I was. Out of shape. What that is. I know. Out of shape. Out of shape or overweight that are maybe like looking to go.
100%.
I would much rather. I would take the time to probably take. I don't know, give a hand or advise if they were to stop me and go, sorry, how does this work or something?
Yeah, because I mean, let's be honest, some of the machines almost look like bizarre
torture instruments.
Yeah, like weapons of war and stuff.
Yeah.
So you do maybe
use the Iron Maiden. Yeah.
Yeah, like okay, which way do I face with this machine? Is it pulling down? Is it like pushing up? Like you do need someone who's maybe used it a few times. And again, I think maybe that's where if you're sitting on a bench just to watch how someone's using something, that's fair enough. You're just you maybe don't want to bother them. You're just learning as you go.
Some people are just introverted, but at the same time, they're still trying to better themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
But there's and then there's people that go to the gym that I think they just go. It's just I don't know, either wanting people to look at them or they want. I don't know. It's just like some sort of weird ego boost for them to like look around and compare themselves to other people.
And I think it serves different purposes. Like at the end of the day, for me, it's very much. Well, back in the day when I was a bit fitter, was exercising so I could eat whatever I wanted. Like, but I think it can also serve the purpose of like that social aspect.
Yeah, totally.
Which, I think it's a good thing, especially with working from home and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think having somewhere where you get a little community.
You need some social aspect, because if you are like, when you work obviously from home 5 days a week, I would get, as long as there's nothing changing the routine, but it would be normally Monday and Thursday. But yeah, I mean, but it's funny, depending on where you go. Like I've heard stories to say that apparently if you go to private gyms that you'll find that there's like a bit of nearly a community aspect. Once people realize you're a regular, it's supposed to be like a pub.
Yeah, that's
but a lot healthier, and you replace the beer with protein shakes.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like if I was to compare, like which one did you go to?
It was Balliol, is it? Yeah,
Balliol.
Balliol, and it was also. Do you remember DW Sports?
Yeah,
that was Abbey Centre. Like that was like probably the first gym I signed up to.
Was it?
So it was, yeah.
What was it like?
It was decent enough. Like I would have used the machines a lot more so. and I started doing a bit more free weights. But then naturally, as I was starting to do the free weights, they shrunk down where it was. So you had like this mat, and it was maybe about the size of this room. So you could at best fit 4 people on it. And the problem was you're doing want to do a full workout, so you're going to be
on it for a long period of
on
time.
it for a long period of time if you can get on it at all. And so it's just like, I'm not going to be spending like all this money per month whenever I don't have the flipping space for this. So I just bought myself like a wee cheapy bench off Gumtree, I think it was, and just started doing workouts in the garage, like,
Yeah.
you know, and that did the job. Still piled up in the back there. Need to clear the garage to actually get at it, but
yeah, but it's there. You know,
it, yeah.
At least it's the options there. If you ever,
well, yeah, I mean,
at least you don't need to lose weight anyway. You know.
Well, no, I mean, I do have a good metabolism, so it's, you know,
it's a blessing.
It is a blessing. Well, it's a blessing and a curse. If you're trying to like bulk up, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I've got like an aggressive tapeworm. It just doesn't matter what I eat. It's just
like whenever I say like I exercised to eat whatever I wanted, I exercised to get the appetite.
I'd eat more.
To eat more.
Yeah.
Because there were some days that I mean, to be honest, nowadays it's still the case that I could go a day without eating anything, and it wouldn't really bother me. Yeah, like the day that I was away to Berlin for work stuff, I think I had like a croissant first thing in the morning, and I wasn't eating anything then until like maybe 8-9 o'clock that night, and it was fine. Like, I don't know what it is, just like I just don't feel hungry, I suppose.
To be fair, yeah, I mean, like there are times like if I'm busy, yeah, I could get that, but yeah, if I'm training, then it becomes harder to ignore.
Yeah, if your body doesn't have the fuel, you feel weaker.
Yeah,
especially doing something physical.
Yeah,
maybe it's just because, again, I do a fairly sedentary job. I'm sitting on a laptop all day, so I'm not moving exactly. So I'm not going to feel weaker. Maybe I'll feel a bit foggier, not doing it, getting as much done. But at the end of the day, that's a trickier metric.
There's a guy started to train with us, Joe, and he would have taken a different approach. So he would have done, I think the way sort of would have described it would have been like, I'm guessing like high intensity, quite full on.
Yeah.
So, but I think he was wanting to sort of bulk out a bit. So he's been training with me and Carl, and he's sort of getting used to it because I think he was going like 6 days a week to he was keeping himself busy and stuff as well. But then obviously Carl trying to get the point across that if you go that many days, there's a chance, you're going to eventually burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And then you overdo it and you'll probably get less from it because your body then just starts eating the reserves. Carl only goes that much because he's clearly got a problem. No, but yeah, with Carl's eating as well. Carl's, I think he's eating like 5 or 6 meals a day anyway. But he's, I don't know. I think Carl's for people that don't know, that's my brother. I'm not slandering some random person called Connor. But he's just a creature of routine, and I think he needs to be regimented with his routine. And then because of the fact that I don't know if there's always a mindset with Carl that he was a certain body shape and weight at one point, that's it.
I think the trick will be, because I think it would be good for him to dial it back a wee bit, because he is very full on with it. Like, and fair play to him, he's an absolute beast of a human at this point. But I think it will be good for him to dial it back a bit. It'll maybe be needing to supplement.
I think he needs
time.
So yeah, but I think because up to a period of time until Carl got full tilt with this and losing weight, I would say he would have put probably more time into music than anything. And I don't know whether or not that will change in the near future, because me and him has been talking about different things, and I think he's finally talking about getting that Carol released, that album. So I mean, that's
good.
That was done ages ago. So I say I don't know whether or not I'll listen to it now and go,
I don't remember.
There'll be like so much of it. I'll probably be like, I forgot how this sounded. I'm hoping that I'll still be happy with it, but I suppose the way you look at it is, it was something that was done years ago.
Yes. But it's always good. Well, even your style of playing has probably developed or changed. Whereas like oh, if I was doing that again, I would maybe do a little bit of a flex here or do a little bit of this or that.
The difference is now that it's such a weird thing to be talking about, that in any creative process, well, I suppose you can probably relate, but once, if you look at something that's a finished product, like probably from your standpoint in terms of development, if it's something that you don't have to be involved in and you've seen the end process and you can gauge with what you like and what you don't, but whenever you actively, I don't know if you're the same, but if you've created something and you have the potential to change it at any point and you could wake up one day and have a different perspective, it feels like it's knowing, getting to the point whenever you can wholeheartedly say, I am fully happy to leave this and never touch it again.
I think if you're being a creative person, like I've done it whenever I've been writing the poetry stuff.
Yeah.
With the DIY stuff in the garage, the DIY stuff is cracker for this because it's very much a case of focusing on getting the job done rather than getting it done perfectly.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm not a professional DIY person.
Does the job.
That's it. But again, I think whenever you're a creative person, you can be very critical of what you're doing. Like I wrote a piece of code for something. To me, it felt very hacky. But then talking about it with someone else, they were looking at it, this is like weeks and months afterwards, and they're like, oh, like I think I was very, talking positively about it. But it's still in my head, it's just like, no, it felt dirty writing that. It didn't feel good. And I think it's just, sometimes you can have a notion in your head of the way things should be.
And because it maybe doesn't match it 100%.
Yeah.
You're never.
Yeah, and like it's like anything, you need to work with the material that you have in front of you. Whether that is like coding limitations on like software development side, or it's, like even just time. At the end of the day, you may not have the time that you want to dedicate to do an album or to do a book or whatever. So you may not be able to refine it as much as you like.
Yeah.
But if it gets the job done and gets the message across that you want to get across, or the feeling that you want, it's a win.
I think probably like what you say there with being creative though, if you do put it out there and you get any sort of feedback to base it on going forward, but there's enough sort of good feedback, that you can go, okay then, so it's a step in the right direction. I know what I can improve on.
Yes.
Whereas, it's different. I imagine if someone does something creatively and it's like, that whole Chinese proverb of if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? If you do it and there's no reception, to me that's worse than probably
negative.
Because
again, as long as you don't
have a response,
as long as you don't have a thin skin, and sometimes you need to put it out there to develop a thicker skin. So as long as you don't have a thin skin or you don't have an ego, negative reviews are just as good, if not better, because they tell you where you can improve. And again, helps develop that discernment, as we talked about before, where it's like, okay, they're being critical of this. That's a personal taste thing.
Whereas if you get like
being a purist for this genre or whatever,
Yeah. Like, well, I suppose like you said with coding as well, as again, I purist, whether or not someone's, very by the book about, how they feel things should be done, or like you say, whether or not it's personal preference. But if you get like a recurrent pattern showing up, that's probably when at one point you're going, right, okay, maybe I've been blind to this.
Maybe I'm lacking in this particular piece of the work. Like I've had that where, whenever people are reviewing code, there's like patterns from multiple people, and like let's be honest, it's probably been me flying through trying to get something done, whilst I should maybe be taking extra steps to be a bit more efficient in this or that, or think more about the bigger picture. And you get that with any creative step. Like maybe you fall into a rut of this particular way of doing something
that you should probably tighten up, but you sort of go, I'll worry about it when it comes to it.
Or it's the trap of, oh, that's just my style. Whenever, even with drawing especially, people will say, oh, it's just my style, or way of writing, that's just my style, when you need to have a baseline standard first before you can then develop your style.
Measure quality that I'm hoping that with this, I'm gonna try. I think once I've got 5 more to record.
Okay.
Is it? Yes, 5. 5. I'm calculating in my head now. 1. Yeah, 5. So I forget. Once I get those done, though, the boring part comes in where you mix things.
The mastering and all. Yeah, I think that's the slog. Like, because again, I've been doing that side project, which I might cut this bit for reasons potentially.
Oh, right, okay.
But I'll talk about that maybe a little bit. But essentially, long story short, it's the slog of okay, got the proof of concept done. Now it needs to actually be something that is usable and sendable.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Yeah, I think, shall we, on that note of...
Like a mummy, wrap it up?
Exactly, yeah. Like the mummy, wrap it up, yeah. There we are. So, yeah, thanks for watching, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We're getting up there now with episode 4, I suppose. But yeah, been good crack. And yeah, hopefully you like, subscribe, all that sort of nonsense. And yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell! Get a wee bell. Oh, yeah. All the best, folks.
Arrivederci.